Fallout Equestria Child of the Stars, Chapter 6 The Destiny Corporation.
I'd like to tell y'all about the terrifying tale of the prissy ghost who drove every pony crazy with her unnecessary neatness. Ooh, ooh.
Destiny Corps was where my thoughts directed themselves, as did my eyes. The weathered black words sat above the shattered glass entrance hall. High above, the tall, crooked-looking tower stretched almost as far into the sky as a mountain. It was hard to distinguish what was the part of the original design and what was actually ruined, given the whole thing seemed to lean lazily to the right. Its tall and slender design was curved to the point where it looked more like a crescent than an actual tower. Atop its peak were elegant spires, one of which had toppled over. The wires that once held it up now flying over the building's side, chiming with a ghostly melody as they moved into the wind. I tried to ignore that, not allowing to mix it in with the ridiculous idea that this place might be haunted. Besides, it was far from organized as the tale had suggested. Most of the dirt-smothered glass which had once framed the great tower was shattered. A few stories up, a hole tore straight through the slender tower like a great gaping wound. Yet it was not hard to see the damage as an extension of the strange building's curvy design. Once again, my subconscious reminded me that I had never heard of this destiny before, and judging by how hard this place was to find, no pony else seemed to care either. After finally discovering a road that curved up the mountain, and dealing with more than a few irritating samples of the local wildlife, you finally found yourself upon the cracked parking lot that sat at the building's front. Surrounded by the field of scorched asphalt and decaying wagons was a thick concrete wall. An equally firm-looking gate in combination with rows of barbed wire guarded the entrance against anyone that couldn't just simply fly over. Instead, such a threat would have to deal with the lines of turrets that lined the wall like deadly barbs on a vine. Unfortunately, for those who own this place, none of the defenses seemed to work anymore. The wall was mostly crumbling and the turrets were dormant, as was any sign of power in the front gate. I found it hard to picture how any pony could have seen this place and thought,
Well, that looks appealing. Let's go there.
Then again, I'd heard of entire cities designed with the simple goal of keeping unwanted attention out. Star stood behind me, finishing off the last of the automated defenses before they had a chance to become hostile. My attention was cast between regarding the shattered entrance ahead, the likes of which were decorated by neat steps that curved around long dead shrubs and a dried fountain, and keeping an eye on Cherry. After getting a decent amount of sleep, food, and water in her system, she was becoming slightly less clingy. For now, however, I didn't know whether that was good or bad.
You think that all of the security inside is gonna be so friendly?
She asked in a cautious tone, as if fearing that she may jinx the favorable situation. I greatly hoped the thought preceding that question wouldn't tempt fate either.
I wouldn't take it for granted, that's for sure,
I commented, eyes scouring the shattered glass doors beneath the weathered and crooked words of the Destiny Corporation logo. Even from here, I could see turrets on the roof just inside the door, spinning like they were lost.
Can't say the wasteland's fair even when you want to show some pony how bad it is. Huh?
Cherry commented with a small smile. I rolled my eyes, but she couldn't be more right. The moment I wanted to teach some pony how to survive the wasteland turned nice. A part of me wondered, if I gathered enough ponies all trying to do the same thing, could we not trick the wasteland into returning to the world it once was? Though, I knew it could never be that easy. The thought of Cherry's budding humor was reassuring, though. Well, those ones seem friendly enough, Star stated, motioning towards a group of aimless turrets just inside the foyer.
I'd still blast them,
I added, and seconds later my companion's minigun whirred, its draconic roar swiftly reducing the turrets to naught, but sparkling shards of metal and smoldering dust. Well, they're certainly friendly now, Star quiped, firmly stepping up onto the bone-strewn staircase that led towards the entrance. I drew my saddle blaster, which I'd now upgraded with extra parts from the second rifle, along with some parts from Buckshot's store, before we left him and Gina there to salvage what they could from the place. With a metallic clatter, Star kicked the remains of one of the turrets into the central foyer. It was no surprise that the movement attracted no fire from the second pair of automated guns that sat on the platform above. Regardless, they swiftly met that same fate. The interior was a towering, equilateral antechamber that rose all the way up to the sharp steeple that we'd observed from the outside. The once pristine walls that surrounded us were ringed with layers of wide balconies, mostly having collapsed long ago, but still linked by the remains of ornate glass elevators. At the very top, a huge glass skylight had been shattered by the toppled rooftop spire, filling the room beneath the vast mounds of rubble. A large rusting cylinder on the far right below several collapsed balconies was what remained of the fallen spire's tip. Under the ash, sand, and bones, the floor had once been tiled. Directly before us, it fell away in the form of several shallow steps before flattening out, each row covered by dozens of fixed seats. Their frames were warped and rusted, hardly distinguishable from the layers of skeletons that sprawled atop the disintegrated remains of the seat's dull blue padding. In the center of the room was a huge semicircle reception desk. Above, tattered and faded banners were hung from the balconies of the first level. The one on the left side boldly stated, "We make better ponies," and on the right was a far too torn and weathered to pass on its faded message, while the poster on the far right boasted a similar slogan, "Destiny, building brighter futures." The faded image of a sun rising over the horizon was displayed behind the deep blue comet-style emblazoned text. The last billboard-sized banner was suspended on the flat wall directly above us and stretched like a great tapestry over the entire surface. Upon it was an image of an orange-coated unicorn stallion donned in a fine blue business suit and tie. At its hooves, the company's title once again claimed that it was building a brighter future for every last mare, stallion, and foal. The stallion's eyes seemed to watch me with a look of arrogant judgment, but I'd seen far too many monolithic paragons of propaganda to even care. In the end, that bright future had been no better than the bright glow of balefire, and the fact that this place was littered with skeletons was a testament to that. Most of the bones were piled on the stairs as if trying to reach the doors all the decades ago. I looked over them with caution. The bullet holes that dotted the floor and walls suggested that turrets had been responsible for this massacre. A few of the bodies stood out as being far more armed and armored than the rest, and some weren't even ponies. I'd seen enough griffins in my time to know what a dead one looked like. My concern regarding the friendly security system perked at the sight. Either those guns were just waiting to turn on us, some pony else with a gun was in here, or the turrets had been shooting at something else. Whatever had killed these ponies. Fuck. I hated pre-war teams like this. They were all the same. Littered with dead bodies and no way to know precisely why.
Don't suppose you see this too often?
Cherry asked me carefully, the sight of the numerous dead destroying that mental fortitude that she had built up. I glanced back, the glow of my magic forging a path through the bony plethora of skeletons and scattered bones as we proceeded.
All too often,
I sighed.
But after passing the 100th skeleton, you start getting inured into it. Moping around won't bring the dead back to life. It'll only get you killed.
I'd no idea whether it was the sight before me or just the idea I was dragging her along to see it. But if she even stood a chance out here, she needs to brave the ultimate truth of the wasteland. Never let the dead or misfortune of others get to you. Be a good pony, be better, but never be the hero. If you're looking for survival advice, keep your eyes open, Star grumbled. As long as you aren't holed up in a foxhole you've dug for yourself or staying somewhere you know is secure, always assume that your environment is unsafe. Scan your surroundings, listen to hoof steps, scrambling claws hissing, or the sound of machines activating. Listen for the sound of a round being loaded into a rifle. Learn to discern the click of a safety being switched off. Use every available sense to search for danger. The smell of gunpowder, the ozone of a magic gun blast, the stink of something dead. Put your ears on the ground and listen for movement. He locked Cherry with a firm glare. Because if you don't use your senses and stay alerted out here, you'll be dead in a day, or worse, get us killed too. Both of us glanced back at him, and I could feel Cherry edge closer to me as I mouthed my words.
My job,
to him sourly. He rolled his eyes in response, still unconvinced that I could protect my new charge. You just make sure that you're up to that because chances are pretty good that we're all gonna have to split up, he told me. Split up? My ears fell flat to that. I was no stranger to that kind of plan, as we'd done it countless times on other jobs. Still, we did it so much that it seemed pointless to be in a pair, but he always took the broadcaster while I had my pip-bug. My downcast look only seemed to confirm his fears about my motivations, but I ultimately nodded.
You take downstairs,
I told him, looking to the balconies. I'll take either, but you've got that pip-bug, he stated, nodding to my foreleg.
Shit, I'd forgotten that we were looking for some sort of terminal.
Then the idea came to me. I paused by the central desk, peering over its dusty edge. 3 terminals sat on a shelf running along the interior of the circular section. Paper, quills, and a whole manner of office supplies were littered amongst them, as well as the bones of several ponies. Most lay collapsed on the floor, yet one was sat lazily on a lone stool before the centralmost terminal, the only one that still flickered with dark emerald green glows. The pair of us glanced down at it, then at each other. Then I smirked as I holstered my weapon.
I'll check and see if they have a record or something,
I suggested, hoping dearly it would result in us staying together as I moved round to the desk. With a flicker of my horn, the bones of a Pegasus pony were pushed aside, warranting no added respect from me as they were mixed with the other remains. I took its former seat, studying the terminal before me. Destiny Core has replaced the typical stable logo upon the screen, and the password prompt that typically accompanied the logo was missing. Either the Pegasus had been logged in for almost 2 centuries, or there had been no security to begin with. Destiny Corporation building brighter futures flashed on the screen again, this time appearing on the tail of a comet as it dashed from one side to another.
Let's see,
I muttered to myself, biting my lower lip as I looked through. The star was still outside the horseshoe-shaped reception desk and was sorting through the pile of bones. Cherry was close behind me, her eyes also on the screen. Most of the things that we found were just appointments, timetables, and finances, all of which were now completely irrelevant. The fact, according to the information, this place safeguarded a lot of pre-war money within several vaults. There was also an unsettling but thoroughly unsurprising amount of bribing and blackmailing going on behind the scenes. Destiny Corps had even lobbied 2 ministries, although given that it appeared privately owned, I could see why. A directory labeled Security caught my eye. It wasn't completely ridiculous to have the controls of your building defense on your front desk's terminal, was it? Manual shutdown of security grid activated at 800 hours. Successfully restored by Overseer. Systems restored to full functionality by order of Overseer, the text stated. All I took from it was that still functional probably meant still liable to shoot you in the rear if you weren't careful. I eventually came across a file titled Faculty Map, and opening it presented me with a frustrating caption declaring that all internal files were locked by order of Overseer. Below that was something strange, a text box. Would you like to know more? The words wrote themselves into existence just beneath a neat green rectangle. I was flat out of ideas, which, when it came to terminals, was admittedly few to begin with. I fought the urge to bang my hoof on the desk while I glared at the screen, eyes narrowing at the blinking green cursor as if doing something would somehow force the inanimate object to obey me.
Would you like to know more? Yes, I would like to know more,
I growled in my head. But with nothing else to go on, I asked it how to lift the file's lockdown. The file lockdown can be lifted manually via Server Hub. Server Hub location, Level 4, Room 234-9. Unlocked files will be dispatched to the terminal's mainframe by default order of Overseer. Files can be extracted from the mainframe via an external storage device. Mainframe location, Sublevel 3, Corridor 23B, Aisle 45C. Have a nice day. Now we knew where the objective was, but we still needed to know the name of the file that we were after, a question I knew the terminal couldn't really answer.
Star? What exactly are we looking for?
I asked skeptically. He turned back to me, thinking deeply for a moment. Not too sure myself. The contract never named exactly what they were after. I was just gonna say, take whatever we can find and give it all to Griddle, he suggested. I had a feeling some pony wanted to keep exactly what they were after to themselves. I said as much, but Star didn't comment and Cherry just seemed to grow even more curious. That was a good change, I noted, given that I'd unintentionally summoned the shift in feeling. A moment later, I stood up, glancing back at the screen. If I was reading the terminal's instructions right, one of us had to be upstairs while another was downstairs. The higher one needed to unlock the system manually, while the lower one extracted the needed files. My ears flattened once more as I realized that I hadn't actually fixed our separation problem, but merely confirmed it. Given that I was the only one with means of downloading anything from the mainframe, it looked like Star would have to take the upstairs after all. My gut sank even lower at that. I fucking hated pre-war death tombs, excluding the one that I lived in though. I reminded myself that I'd done it before and for far fewer caps than this. Not to mention that this place seemed fairly safe and quiet for such a high payment. With that bold statement, I made sure at least one hoof was touching the wooden desk.
One of us needs to go upstairs, level 4, room, 234, -9, to lift the lockdown,
I explained, glancing back to the terminal's instructions to ensure that I was correct. Huh? Star grumbled while raising a confused eyebrow.
Some pony called the Overseer has blocked all access to the system, and it's apparently in strict control of the security. So,
I trailed off, glancing back at the screen.
Basically, you need to go upstairs, find the mainframe, and unlock it.
Star looked up to the balconies above. There's a lot of rooms up there, Dragon.
Level 4, room 234-9.
I repeated in frustration.
I don't know, follow the signs or ask a terminal. They actually seem helpful for once.
Cherry had remained silent for the entire conversation, her eyes fixed onto the terminal screen. As I moved, she followed, almost as blindly as the place's security system.
Well, looks like we're heading downstairs.
I told her as enthusiastically as I could, yet my loathing made it substantially more difficult. She shook her head slightly before her expression sunk. She wasn't okay? Celestia, what's wrong? I was actually panicking more about her feelings than the potential tunnel trek ahead. What was wrong with me?
Can't think of anywhere better,
she stammered sheepishly. I took in a breath of relief. She was fine. No, she was far from fine, my mind countered. Fine physically, she was at least fine there, at least. I just hoped that sudden drop in attitude was because she hated this idea of going down just as much as I did. Level 4? Star asked, glaring up at the fifth-most balcony. I pulled my eyes away from my nervous companion to look at him.
Yeah, somewhere up there,
I said, pointing a hoof upwards with only a portion of my focus. He sighed, staring towards a set of stairs behind the desk. I'll meet you there, but if any sign of trouble comes up, you leave, find a new position, and radio me, alright? He declared firmly before turning back with a wink, his gesture shattering the strictness of his ground rules slightly. I flushed a little. I couldn't help it.
You damn be careful up there too,
I instructed before he disappeared up into the stairs, the sound of his metal plates fading. I looked back at Cherry, who still wore the dull, introspective expression of deep thought.
You sure you are alright?
I asked her skeptically. She sighed, looking up.
Yeah, I'm fine. It's just been a while since, well, you know.
She swept a hoof over the boneyard that was in the room. I frowned and was about to open my muzzle, but then she spoke again.
And no, it's not getting to me, it's just...
She continued before I could speak.
Another failure, isn't it?
I closed my muzzle and swallowed. We certainly had much more in common in that regard, and in truth, I saw myself at her core. I could almost envision her as a younger me, the filly that had just lost everything, and in that view, she was far stronger, able to buck off the anxiety that was trying to grip her and stand firm.
You know you're a good pony, one of the best,
I told her, hiding the fact that I appreciated her just standing there, radiating with the image of what I'd once aspired to be. That had all been before the wasteland broken and battered me down anyway. She smiled but didn't seem to take the compliment in quite the same way that she'd taken the others. In her mind, I could still see that mental battle playing out, and it was preventing the humble cuteness I now expected from such a conversation. But I bucked the thought from my mind. I didn't deserve such a response. Shaking that from my head, I glanced back at the terminal. Mainframe location, sub-level 3, corridor 23B, aisle 45C. I asked exactly where that was. Please follow the signs, he responded. I could practically hear the condescending tone in my head.
Right,
I grumbled as the slight irony of my advice came back to bite me. With that, I turned away and followed the signs into the depths of Destiny Core.